The auditorium at Carnegie Hall holds 2,804 people. On March 15, 2016, every seat was filled. The audience included critics from the New York Times, musicians from the Metropolitan Opera, and New Yorkers who'd paid premium prices for tickets. The lights dimmed. The conductor raised his baton, and onto the stage walked 40 women in matching outfits who'd arrived that afternoon in a bus with bars on the windows. They were inmates from Bedford Hills Correctional Facility, and they were about to perform Handel's Messiah in one of the world's most prestigious concert halls. This is the story of how a prison choir became so accomplished that they performed at Carnegie Hall, and what happened to the women who sang their way from cells to stages. The Bedford Hills Correctional Facility Choir was founded in 1999 by Mary Cohen, a music educator who'd worked in public schools before retiring. She'd read about arts programs in prisons showing positive effects on rehabilitation and recidivism. She contacted Bedford Hills, New York's maximum security women's prison, and proposed starting a choir. The warden was skeptical, but agreed to a trial program. Mary expected maybe a dozen women to show up to the first rehearsal. 73 came. The women who joined had no musical training. Most had never sung in organized groups. Their backgrounds ranged from drug charges to murder convictions. Their sentences ranged from 5 years to life. What they shared was a desire for something beyond the routines of incarceration. The counts, the meals, the work assignments, the endless waiting. Music offered an escape that wasn't escape, a way to be somewhere else while physically remaining locked inside. Mary started with basics, breathing exercises, vocal warm-ups, simple songs in unison. The women struggled initially. Singing requires vulnerability, opening your mouth and making sound that others judge. In prison, vulnerability is dangerous. Women had learned to keep voices low, to avoid standing out, to never show weakness. Learning to sing meant unlearning survival habits built over years of incarceration. But something happened during those early rehearsals. Women who'd barely spoken to each other because of racial tensions or gang affiliations found themselves standing side by side, singing the same notes, creating harmony. The act of listening to each other, really listening, matching pitch, blending voices, required a form of cooperation that transcended the divisions that usually defined prison relationships. The choir became a space where the normal rules didn't quite apply. By 2001, the choir had advanced enough to perform holiday concerts for other inmates and staff. The performances were emotional. Women who'd committed terrible crimes stood on a makeshift stage and sang about redemption, hope, and peace. Some inmates in the audience wept. Guards who normally maintained emotional distance found themselves moved. The music created moments of shared humanity in a place designed to dehumanize. Word spread beyond Bedford Hills. In 2003, a documentary filmmaker named Megan McManama began filming the choir for a project that would become Choirs Behind Bars. The documentary captured rehearsals, performances, and interviews with choir members about what music meant to them. One woman, serving 25 to life for murder, said, "When I'm singing, I'm not a prisoner. I'm not my crime. I'm just a voice that goes with other voices to make something beautiful." The choir's reputation grew. They performed at churches, at community centers, at events advocating for criminal justice reform. Each performance required extensive logistics, security escorts, transportation in vehicles with barred windows, guards stationed backstage. The women wore matching outfits that identified them as inmates. They couldn't interact with audience members. They returned to prison immediately after performances. But during the time they were singing, something shifted. The audience stopped seeing inmates. and started seeing musicians. In 2012, the choir was invited to perform at a fundraiser for the Malala Fund. The event featured prominent musicians and activists. The Bedford Hills women sang a piece called "Bring Him Home" from Les Miserables. The lyrics about freedom and redemption took on different meaning, coming from women who might never experience freedom. The performance received a standing ovation. Several attendees approached the organizers afterward, asking how they could support the choir and the women in it. This led to partnerships with professional musicians and music organizations. The choir began receiving coaching from vocal instructors who normally worked with opera companies. Their repertoire expanded from folk songs and hymns to classical pieces requiring technical skill and musical sophistication. By 2015, they were preparing Handel's Messiah, one of the most challenging pieces in choral literature. The invitation to Carnegie Hall came in late 2015. A conductor who'd worked with the choir proposed including them in a larger performance, featuring multiple choirs from across New York. The Carnegie Hall administration was hesitant. They'd never hosted a prison choir, but after hearing recordings of the Bedford Hills women, they agreed. The performance was scheduled for March 2016. Preparing for Carnegie Hall was intense. The women rehearsed 3 times a week for 4 months. They memorized complex harmonies, learned to follow a conductor, practiced the stage entrances and exits. For many, it was the most challenging thing they'd attempted in their lives, more difficult than anything they'd faced before or during incarceration. Several women wanted to quit. The pressure of performing at such a prestigious venue felt overwhelming, but they continued. And on March 15, 2016, they boarded the bus for the 2-hour drive to Manhattan. Most hadn't been outside the prison in years. Some were seeing New York City for the first time. They arrived at Carnegie Hall in the afternoon, were escorted through the back entrance, and had one brief rehearsal on stage before the evening performance. The performance was flawless. Critics who reviewed it noted the raw emotional power and surprising technical proficiency of the Bedford Hills Choir. The audience gave them the longest standing ovation of the evening. Women who'd spent years being invisible, being reduced to their crimes, being told they were failures, stood on one of the world's most famous stages and were celebrated for their talent. But here's what happened next that makes this story more than a feel-good moment. 3 women from that Carnegie Hall choir were granted clemency in the following 2 years. Their performances and participation in the choir didn't directly cause the clemency. Each had applied through official channels, had served decades of their sentences, had demonstrated rehabilitation through multiple programs. But the choir gave parole boards and clemency officials a way to see these women as complex humans, rather than just their crimes. One of these women was Jennifer, who'd sung soprano in the Carnegie Hall performance. She'd been sentenced to 15 years to life for second-degree murder in 1997. She'd killed her abusive boyfriend during a violent altercation. She'd served 19 years when the governor granted her clemency in 2017. During her clemency hearing, officials specifically mentioned her participation in the choir and the discipline, commitment, and rehabilitation it demonstrated. Jennifer said later that singing taught her she could create something beautiful despite her past, that she deserved redemption even after taking a life. The choir continues today. Mary Cohen, now in her 80s, still directs. The membership changes as women are released or transferred, but there's always a waiting list of inmates wanting to join. They perform regularly, though never again at a venue as prestigious as Carnegie Hall. That single performance remains a highlight in the program's history. But the impact extends beyond performances. Studies of arts programs in prisons show that participants have significantly lower recidivism rates than non-participants. A 2018 study by Arizona State University found that women who participated in prison arts programs were 73% less likely to return to prison within 3 years of release. The reasons are complex. Arts programs teach discipline, provide purpose, offer paths to identity beyond criminal records. But participants themselves often cite something simpler. Arts programs remind them they're human. The Bedford Hills Choir demonstrates this. Women who'd been told they were irredeemable discovered they could learn complex music. Women who'd been defined by their worst actions discovered they could create beauty. Women who'd been isolated in cells discovered they could harmonize with others. The transformation wasn't magical or instantaneous. It required years of work, commitment, and practice. But it happened. Not every prison offers arts programs. Budget cuts eliminate them first. Security concerns restrict them. Philosophical opposition argues that prisoners don't deserve enrichment opportunities, that punishment should be purely punitive. The Bedford Hills Choir survives because of dedicated volunteers, private funding, and institutional support from a warden who believes rehabilitation requires treating inmates as capable of change. The broader question is what we believe prisons should accomplish. If the goal is purely punishment, make them suffer for their crimes, then arts programs are unnecessary luxuries. But if the goal includes rehabilitation, prepare them to return to society, then programs that build skills, confidence, and community become essential. The Bedford Hills Choir doesn't erase the crimes these women committed. Jennifer still killed someone. That reality doesn't disappear because she can sing Handel. But the choir offers a path from perpetrator to person, from crime to capability, from despair to hope. Carnegie Hall has a plaque listing notable performers who've graced its stage. The Bedford Hills Correctional Facility Choir isn't on it. They performed as part of a larger event, not as the headlining act. But for the 40 women who stood on that stage, who sang in front of thousands, who proved that prisoners could create art worthy of one of the world's great venues, the lack of official recognition doesn't diminish what they accomplished. If you want to hear more stories about transformation through arts programs, about how creativity survives in places designed to crush it, subscribe to Prison Diaries. Because the Bedford Hills Choir reminds us that humans are more than their worst moments, that talent exists in unexpected places, and that sometimes singing together can change lives in ways punishment alone never could.